Chad's economy is experiencing some difficulties that are impeding its expansion. These problems are highlighted in the most recent World Bank report, which also notes that up to 3.34 million more people may become impoverished by 2050 as a result of shocks related to climate change. The nation is quite concerned about this economic burden. The humanitarian catastrophe in the eastern areas is being exacerbated by the flood of Sudanese refugees. Around 440,000 refugees have arrived since mid-April as a result of violence in Sudan that has affected areas like Sila, Wadi Fira, and Wadai. Chad's political landscape is unstable. Recent occurrences highlight how urgently a peace process including important parties is needed. Notably, tensions and unrest were highlighted by the over 70 arrests of political party supporters in the first few days of October. Chad, as a nation, faces many difficulties in addition to its political and economic problems. It is a landlocked, arid, low-income country that is constantly struck by weather shocks and surrounded by nations that are embroiled in conflict. Chad, which has an estimated population of 17.1 million, is ranked close to the bottom of a number of international indexes, such as the Gender Inequality Index, Human Development Index, Global Hunger Index, and Fragile State Index. There is a serious humanitarian crisis. About 7.6 million people are in need of aid as per the 2023 Humanitarian Response Plan revision. But money is a big problem. As of October, only around 25% of the needed funds had been raised. In conclusion, Chad is juggling a difficult combination of political, humanitarian, and economic issues, and it is in desperate need of assistance and long-term fixes. The French military turned its attention to counter-terrorism and regional stability initiatives in Chad and the larger Sahel region after Operation Epervier concluded. Operation Barkhane is a noteworthy operation that was started in 2014. This mission, which involves several thousand French forces dispersed across various nations, including Chad, constitutes a wide strategy against Islamist extremist organizations in the Sahel. It is an important partner and the center of operations for this project because of its advantageous location and relative stability. A variety of actions have been taken as part of Operation Barkhane, ranging from direct military clashes with rebel organizations to providing instruction and assistance to regional militaries in the Sahel. Although the operation has been successful in dismantling terrorist networks and activities, it still faces difficulties because of the large and intricate terrain, as well as the ever-changing tactics used by insurgents. Apart from Operation Barkhane, France has taken part in various additional endeavors and operations inside the region, frequently in cooperation with other nations and global institutions. These initiatives seek to address the underlying causes of instability and terrorism, bolster local governments, and improve security. It is noteworthy to mention that there has been discussion and opposition to France's military engagement in Chad and the Sahel. While some see it as an essential component of maintaining regional peace and counter-terrorism efforts, others condemn it as an extension of neo-colonial power in the area. All things considered, the more recent French military actions in Chad show a change from direct colonial-style interventions to more extensive regional security initiatives meant to tackle the problems of terrorism and instability in the Sahel. When France started enlarging its colonial empire into Central Africa in the late 19th century, Chad's history with the French military began. In 1900, Chad was incorporated into French Equatorial Africa. During this time, colonial control was established and frequently imposed through military force, along with the creation of administrative institutions. Chad served as a battlefield during World War I, when French forces used it as a base to fight German-controlled regions of Africa. France solidified its hold in Chad after World War I, concentrating on administrative dominance and resource extraction. The world witnessed initiatives toward decolonization after the Second World War. The 1950s saw the growth of various movements in Chad, which raised the country's desire for independence. The French military participated in quelling these disturbances. However, they started to progressively relax their hold. Even after Chad gained its independence in 1960, French forces continued to be present. France continued to meddle in internal affairs of Chad during the post-independence period, frequently defending its actions by pointing to the government's defense against rebel organizations and outside threats. Political unrest and uprisings occurred in Chad throughout the 1960s and 1970s. France frequently sent out its armed forces to assist the Chadian administration out of concern for both its interests and the stability of the region. During the Chadian Civil War and the Chadian-Libyan conflict, this engagement was particularly noteworthy. Operation Manta, 1983-1984, was the most important French military operation in Chad. Épervier, 1986-2014, was the second most significant. The goal of these activities was to assist the Chadian administration and stop Libyan expansionism in the area. In order to drive back Libyan forces and maintain political stability, France played a critical role. The French military's presence in Chad has recently been a component of larger regional operations, such Operation Barkhane, against terrorism and insurgency in the Sahel. France has demonstrated its ongoing strategic interest in the Sahel by using Chad as a base for operations there. The intricate relationship between the legacy of colonialism, current security issues, and regional politics characterizes the history of French military engagement in Chad. During the Scramble for Africa, in which European nations fought for control of the African continent, Chad first became involved with France in the late 19th century. The region was first visited by French explorers and military expeditions looking to build their colonial empire. Chad was included into French Equatorial Africa and made an official French province in 1900. This time period, which was characterized by the construction of colonial administrative structures and the exercise of power over the indigenous populace, signaled the start of direct French administration in Chad. The French prioritized imposing their administrative structures and taking advantage of Chad's natural riches, such cotton. But it wasn't an easy or unopposed process. Numerous local leaders and communities protested foreign authority and the uprooting of their traditional ways of life, and they faced pushback from the French. Leaders like Rabi Az-Zubair, a warlord from Sudan, who ruled over most of the area prior to the French invasion, were among those who put up a notable fight. Chad served as a base for French military operations against German colonies in Africa during World War I. During this time, Chad also provided soldiers and supplies to support the French military operation. French rule was solidified throughout the interwar years with the construction of infrastructure and increased resource extraction. The Chadian people, however, also had to endure suffering during this period due to high taxes, forced labor, and other forms of exploitation. Africa experienced a wave of decolonization following the end of World War II. As a result, nationalist groups and political parties calling for independence emerged in Chad. As a result of the increasing strength of these movements in the 1950s, Chad was recognized as an independent republic by the French community in 1958. On August 11, 1960, Chad finally gained complete independence from France. French colonial rule officially ended with this, but by military interventions and political persuasion, France maintained its influence over Chad's political and economic landscape for many years to come. As a result, Chad's history of colonialism with France was characterized by substantial upheaval, exploitation, and the slow emergence of nationalist movements that eventually resulted in independence. Chad is presently undergoing a political transition as a result of the long-term President Idris Deby Itno's departure in 2021. Mahamat Deby Itno, his son, is now serving as president in transition. The country's political stability has come under scrutiny in light of this shift, especially in light of the power transfer within the same family. Political unrest continues in Chad as civil society organizations and opposition parties demand democratic reforms and more inclusive governance. Citizens have demanded more political representation and an open political process through protests and marches. security issues still represent a serious risk to Chad. Instability is caused by extremist and rebel groups operating in the area. The administration still views countering these security concerns as its top priority. The world community keeps a careful eye on Chad's political circumstances, and numerous nations and international organizations support a smooth and inclusive transition. They emphasize how crucial it is to preserve democratic values and the rule of law. Human rights issues have been brought up, mainly in relation to freedom of speech and civil freedoms. Human rights concerns in Chad have been highlighted by reports of arrests and crackdowns on political dissidents and critical media outlets. Chad's economy is beset by issues such as high unemployment and poverty. There is pressure on the transitional government to resolve these economic problems and raise people's standard of living. The political climate of Chad affects the stability of the Sahel region as a whole. In order to address security challenges in the larger Sahel region, the nation's participation in regional security efforts, such the G5 Sahel, is essential. Various Chad stakeholders, including political parties, civil society organizations, and the international community, have urged for institutional and political reforms to achieve a stable and democratic Chad in response to these complex issues. The historical engagement of France with the natural resources of Chad. The beginning of Chad's oil narrative was the surge in oil exploration in the southern Deby Basin during the early 2000s. After it was discovered that this area was oil-rich, major international oil companies, including the French energy giant Total, were drawn to it. Chad's abundant oil resources offered prospects as well as difficulties, and France's engagement was crucial in determining the country's energy environment. One of the main participants in Chad's oil industry was Total, a well-known French oil corporation. The company's involvement in the development of oil reserves, extraction operations, and infrastructural projects characterized its presence in Chad. The Chad-Cameroon pipeline was one of the most noteworthy projects. International oil corporations, including Total, worked on the massive Chad-Cameroon pipeline project, which played a key role in moving Chadian oil to the Atlantic coast for export. The pipeline, which connected Chad's oil sector to the coast of Cameroon, was a vital piece of infrastructure. Considering that Total was involved, France had a major role in this project, which had a big impact on Chad's oil exports and income production. Although oil constituted the main focus of French interest in Chad, it is important to remember that France looked into other areas as well. In order to take use of Chad's mineral and arable land resources, French enterprises expanded into other industries, including mining and agriculture. The goal of these diversification initiatives was to maximize Chad's potential for economic growth. France had more to do with Chad's natural resources than just business. Economic cooperation were significantly shaped by the diplomatic and political ties that existed between the two nations. These relations were further strengthened by France's support of Chad's security and stability in the unstable area. The French government's acquisition of natural resources in Chad has not been without criticism. There have been expressed concerns about governance, transparency, and the fair distribution of resources. There has been discussion and worry about how oil income management affects Chad's development. The creation of a security void in Chad is among the most likely and scary situations. The region has stabilized, and counter-terrorism measures have benefited greatly by the presence of French forces. Their departure might give rebel factions and extremist organizations more confidence, which would heighten violence and instability. Chad's vulnerability may make the security issues in the Sahel region worse, which are already rather serious. Throughout its history, Chad has seen periods of political instability. A French exit from the country might leave a power vacuum, which could result in political unrest and possible power clashes. A new political order may be difficult to implement, and rival groups may fight for dominance, which could spark hostilities. One major worry is how a French pullout would affect humanitarian efforts. Chad has experienced food insecurity, displacement, and restricted access to essential services, among other humanitarian concerns. The delivery of aid and humanitarian activities have been aided by French military. Vulnerable populations may suffer as a result of their absence, making the humanitarian situation worse. The security of the Sahel region is intimately related to Chad's stability. There's a chance that a crisis in Chad might affect its neighbors. Chad's vulnerability may make the security issues in the Sahel region worse, which are already rather serious. It is clear from analyzing the changing dynamics in Chad that the country is at a turning point with a range of possibilities and difficulties ahead of it. Here are some concluding remarks on the state of affairs. Chad's security continues to be of the utmost importance, both for its own stability and the stability of the larger Sahel region. The nation plays a critical role in the fight against terrorism, and preserving security is necessary to stop extremist organizations and rebel forces from regrouping. Given Chad's past political upheaval, ensuring a smooth transition to a new political system will be essential. It is possible for the international community to assist democratic procedures and improvements in government. The people of Chad have proven resilient in the face of humanitarian catastrophes, despite obstacles. Sustaining development initiatives and humanitarian aid are essential to meeting the needs of disadvantaged groups. The security of the Sahel region is linked to Chad's stability. To handle shared security issues, neighboring countries must enhance their regional cooperation and coordination. Although Chad's economy has historically been highly dependent on oil, diversifying it into other industries like mining and agriculture can increase resilience and lessen vulnerabilities to changes in the price of oil. France and other members of the international community are crucial in promoting the growth and stability of Chad. Working together and pursuing diplomatic relations can help handle the changing circumstances in Chad and the larger Sahel area. Before his death in April 2021, Idris Deby, a well-known military and political figure from Chad, presided over the country for more than 30 years. Here are some important details about him. Idris Deby was born in the town of Berdoba, Chad, on June 18, 1952. He became an army officer after completing his military training in France. Deby took the helm of the Patriotic Salvation Movement, MPS, a rebel organization, and successfully overthrew President Hissène Habré in December 1990, usurping power. His lengthy reign in Chad officially began with this. Deby was one of the longest-serving presidents in Africa, having held the office for 30 years. Throughout his reign, Chad saw both stability and strife. Numerous issues, such as internal strife, rebel activities, and regional instability, dogged Deby's administration. In particular, Chad was instrumental in countering Islamist terrorist groups operating in the Sahel. The fact that Deby was re-elected several times in presidential elections drew criticism from opposing parties and foreign observers. On April 20, 2021, Idris Deby tragically lost his life in fighting between rebel groups and government forces in the northern region of Chad. His passing sparked concerns about the political future of the nation. Mahamat Idris Deby, Deby's son, became acting president in his stead after his death. If you're eager to explore more captivating videos on history, culture, and civilization, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Like and share our content for even more intriguing videos. Stay tuned for our next video.